Well, good morning, and by morning I mean very late afternoon. Last night when I was tearing all this down, I noticed that the power steering pump pulley doesn't actually line up with anything. So this morning I went and got a puller installer and pressed it on the rest of the way, ran the belt and realized not nearly enough of the belt is actually attached to the pulley. So what that will do is cause it to squeak and squeal, and I'm not going to have power steering or power brakes. So sat down for a while and tried to figure out what to do, and what I came up with is I got the pulley for a car. Now the pulley for the car has two V-belt locations, which allows me to go from the crank to the power steering pump, and then another belt going from the crank to the water pump to the AC pump to the power steering pump and then back again. That will enable both the pump and the AC compressor to have really good traction to a belt. Not the same belt, but to a belt. Once that was figured out, I noticed that the line that goes from the evaporator to the condenser had an extra port to it. Now the extra port, I have no idea what it goes to. The best I can think of is maybe the Suburban version of this car had a rear AC that would connect to that. In either case, went around town finding a plug, and hopefully what I came up with will effectively plug that. With all that being said, let's get started on taking the evaporator and the dryer off and start installing new parts. Then we can start also figuring out the lines. I think, now that I said that, I think I'm going to see if I can figure out the two lines, the one that goes from the compressor to here and the compressor to here, before we do anything. And that's just mostly to not have humidity touch the dryer until the very last moment. So let's get started with figuring out the lines and how long we need them to be, and go from there. Okay, we're going to start by taking off these caps, finding appropriate connectors, and then we'll figure out how long these lines need to be and where they're going to snake to. So these two lines are going to go here. One is going to connect to this, and this is why I didn't want to set up the new one, is because this is open to the air and the desiccant's ruined into it. Instead of, while I'm fussing with all of this stuff ruining the new one, this one's already bad. Oh, it needs to be bigger than that. Yeah, that's not even close to being the right size. It's amazing how these universal kits are not very universal. Nope. Is it the same size as these? Did they only give me one? Okay. So this is the correct size for this. I need that on both ends, and I have a feeling I'm going to need this on both ends, but we'll find out in a second. No, that's bigger. Okay, so this is a number 8. Both the top and the bottom are number 8s. So, and this number 10. Okay. This universal kit is not very universal. Okay, so I real quick set up all the fittings that I needed, marked the hoses. I'll get those crimped and made up tomorrow, but right now let's work on tearing this stuff apart, starting with the dryer. This is the low pressure switch. I got a new one of those as well as the high pressure switch. Let's see, how nice is this going to be to come off? Yeah, I was afraid of that. Yeah, there you go. Now these dryers, you do not want them to be exposed to air for very long because the desiccant in there can only absorb so much. And once it's done, it's done. I need to loosen that up. I believe that's this size. It is. All right, this is out and it will be completely replaced. While we're being in a destructive mood, we might as well take the rest of this out, which will require opening up this clamshell and loosening up that, which I believe I have the socket for right here. All right. Put all this back so we don't lose it. Alrighty. All right, now this should be free from the rest of it. Just need to pull these, and that should split this apart. Okay, with all those bolts out, should be able to pop these apart. There you go. I should be able to get this to come out of there. What is it caught on? Almost no light can be seen through this. This is completely packed up with 40 years worth of gunk. Let's replace it. Now with that in mind, what does the rest of it look like? There is a fairly decent amount of packing material, so somebody had made a home inside this. Let's see if we can get a good look inside of here. Yeah. There you go. So, with all that out of there, we can now put the new one in. And it looks like somebody has replaced the heating coil at one point in time, which is good because those are not fun inside there. So let's go get the new one. So here's our new evaporator, and you can see through it. So let's get this set into place, and then we'll put that cover back on. Oh, easy there. That will sit there precariously. Let's get the other half of that cover. Might need to put all of this in at once, which will be kind of tough. So let's take this back out, get this kind of in place, and then put this back in. All right, let's see if we can get this all to squeeze in there and play nice. All right. What are we caught up on? Caught on something probably down here. There. A little bit of a fight, but it's in. Now, just to bolt it back together, which we'll start with these two on the firewall and then work our way around the perimeter bolts. All right, now with that in place, we are more or less to the lines that connect all these components together. With that, we have one hard line left to install, and the rest is the rubber lines that need to be made tomorrow. When working on an AC system, especially replacing everything, this is an orifice tube. It is what makes the air conditioning work. If you forget to put this in, nothing gets cold. This is what makes the physics of air conditioning work correctly. There are two types, and it really depends on whether you live in a very hot desert or, well, not in a very hot desert. This is the one that works for temperatures under 105 degrees. There's a different one for if you live somewhere that is consistently over 105 degrees. So let's open this up. This goes into this bottom connection. There's a little spot for it, so we'll pop that cap off and slide this into place. we'll install this pipe here. Now this is the pipe I was talking about earlier where this connection, I'm not quite sure what it goes to. I'm thinking a rear back of vehicle air conditioning, but for me, I put an O-ring in there, a little brass plug with a bunch of Loctite to seal it up. This will connect the condenser to the evaporator and get us one step closer to being done. Kind of like brake lines, sometimes you have to get them straight together, so sometimes you have to bend and flex them to get them to line up to where you want them to be. But that's pretty good. Now we just need to tighten those down and hopefully no leaks, but that will come once we get the rest of the lines put in and we can vacuum check this. I'm going to tighten this down. We're losing light again, so I'll see you tomorrow. Welcome back to day 3. This has been a battle, but we are nearing the end. All we have left is to hook up the pump. We have to do the fan and the fan shroud, and the cooling system will be done. We have the oil cooler that needs to be plumbed, and then everything needs to be vacuum checked and refilled, and we will be able to see if all of this hard work has paid off. With that, let's get started with the AC lines. When it comes to the AC pump, there are 2 lines. You have a smaller one, which will be your discharge line. This has the high compressed liquid. And then you have your suction line. This is what comes from your dryer. Now, you want to try to close up the system as quickly as possible for 2 reasons. One, humidity. The dryer, well, it dries, and it can only dry so much. So you want the system to be open for a small amount of time as possible. The other thing is dust. The pump has very tight tolerances and does not tolerate dust very well. So let's get the lines ready and let's get the dryer done. The small line we can do right now. Okay, first thing we need to check is make sure that both of these have their little O-rings, and they do. So we are good to go with that. Now, this line can go on either way, but I just, because I want it this way, I'm going to have the connection port over there so that both the high side and the low side are on the same side instead of having the gauges all plugged everywhere. So we're going to run this something like this. Now that we have this, we'll kind of rough it in as to where we want to have it. See how we want it to go, what we want it to go under. I think I'm going to want to do it like this. So I'm going to take this cap off, remove the plug, and then kind of start this one. Okay, that gives us good access to the port, keeps everything kind of out of the way. Now we'll go over here to the compressor side, remove the plug and the cap, and install this. What are we caught up on? All right. All right, now, one thing to keep in mind, and I may change this around a little bit because of this. So this is tight, it sits around, but as this belt loosens up, this is gonna pull. So maybe instead of having it on top of all of this, we'll have it go, instead of having it underneath it, we'll have it on top. I may also try to flip this 90 so it will come here and snake around. So let's take a look at this, see if we can make this work a little better. So let's see, if I go on top of all these hoses instead of underneath it, does that give me more stretch? Let's pull this out and just look at worst case scenario. That does, it has a little bit tight roped. What if I change this to go this way? That's going to do something weird with the hose. So I don't want to make the hose want to do something weird like that, and that's going to get me in trouble elsewhere. All right, so this being like this, I don't like this, I don't use it. May remove this bracket, seeing how I don't have the cold air intake pipe, and probably never will, but let's work around this. So that has a decent amount. If we put that like that, that has a decent amount. It's out of trouble. It has some good flex. It will reach. When it's in this, still kind of stays out of trouble. So I think if we tighten it down like this, we are probably in our best consideration for the full travel of the pump. So let's do it. Let's call it like this and get started. Okay, that is now tightened down. We still have access. We still have plenty of slack in the line. That's at full extension, which this should never get to that point. And all of this is below our hood line, which is important. You don't want this dragging against the underside of the hood. Now, before I tighten this down, I need to add oil to this compressor here and then into this line so that it can flow down into the condenser. So let me go grab that now. So the oil that we're going to use is going to be this PAG 100. That's what the compressor manufacturer recommends. Now the compressor did come with some oil. I drained that oil out because I want to make sure I know how much is in the system. The system, being as large as it is going to use about 8 ounces. So I'm going to put half of that in the compressor, and the other half is going to get split up between the condenser, evaporator, and the dryer. So let's start by pouring half of this into that. That is a mighty small hole to pour this into. Hopefully, I don't make too much of a mess. pour it in a weird manner like this, I might be able to actually get it in. Now what's also important is when you're pouring this, to turn the compressor and let that kind of get into all the various chambers. That's not spinning the pulley, but spinning the actual compressor itself, which is not always easy. All right, that should be good. Now, for the oil that we're going to put into the condenser, we're just going to simply pour it into this line and let it flow down. And while I am fussing with that, I'm going to put these caps back on so that nothing can fall into the compressor. To attach it officially to the compressor. Once again, check to make sure that the O-ring is there and in good shape. And now that everything is a big oily mess, this should prove to be fun. Let me go get a towel. This size wrench, but I want to seat it as much by hand because then I know I'm not binding anything, and I know that O-ring got a nice good seal to it. There. Now I know I can tighten down on this, compress that seal, will be good to go. Okay, the next thing we're going to install is the other line, and that will have us have everything ready so that we can open up the dryer and close it up into the system as quickly as possible. Like I said, being this quick about it isn't totally necessary, but you don't want to have the desiccant open to atmosphere for extended periods of time. All right, for this hose, same as before, check to make sure the little O-ring is there, make sure that it's in good condition. I'll take off the cap. Ooh, we will gently place it over there. Give me this. Oh, whoops, wrong end. So on this side, we'll check to make sure that the O-ring is there. Gently place it over here. For this, I'm going to use my crescent wrench as I don't have a wrench big enough for it. One more snug, and there you go. We can now take this, move it to where our belt needs it to be. Oh, get the belt back onto where needs to be on all the pulleys. Slide this in, put this on, And there you go. That leaves us with this. All right, let's take this out. I said, let's take this out. Now, this setup is not going to win any awards at SEMA, but hopefully it'll just keep me cool. All right, let's get the dryer, put it in this hoop, mount that in, tighten this one down, and then we'll fight with this hose. Now, I wanted to put some oil into here as well, and I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. But I will take the remaining amount of oil and put it in here, and that should distribute through the system. Let's not worry about that for the moment. Looks like cooling hoses and everything else are going to be in my way. There's no O-ring there. Let me go through my assortment of O-rings and put that on there. I'm glad I caught that because that can be a mess to find. See what size fits this the best. That seems like it. Now, when you do O-rings, different O-rings are made for different chemicals, so you want to make sure you get ones that are made for the type of coolant, refrigerant, whatever it is that you're trying to seal. Otherwise, it could react badly and not seal, or worse, cause a leak. Okay, now with our O-ring in place, let's put all this in. All right, now with that kind of snug, we'll sneak this in and get it started so that everything's at the right clocking position. Oh. Am I really going to get bested by a strap? There we go. All right, with that tightened down, let's tighten all of this down. Okay, now you notice that there are two connections right here and here. One of these is going to be for our low pressure switch, and one of these is for your low pressure gauge. This is also where you most commonly fill when you go to one of the parts stores and get a can of coolant. You hook it up here. I have both a high and low pressure for my gauge set, but we will use those. Later. In any case, let's figure out this here, because this hose here is about that much too long. So we got to figure out where are we going to hide this excess so that it does not cause us a problem. And it looks like whatever we do, it's going to cause us a problem. Let's fish it down like that. And then we could probably twist this. And we can connect it like that. And I can make a bracket, strap these together like this. And that should keep us mostly, ow, got a metal splinter. That should keep us mostly out of trouble. If we do that. So, check our O-ring. Everything looks good. We should be able to just bolt this on like that. And we'll have to figure out a way of keeping this out of trouble, which we'll do when we button up the rest of the front. Okay, that's as tight as I'm going to be able to get it. So, let's just go through all of our connections. These two are tight because we just did them. This one here we tightened last night. This one we tightened last night. This one we just did. And these two we just did. This system should be good to check. Just trying to think if there's anything we can do before I vacuum check this. I mean, we can hook up various sensors and what have you. But I think right now we could probably get away with hooking up a vacuum pump and seeing if we achieve vacuum. Is there not some giant leak that will cause a problem like that? And if we do achieve vacuum, how good of a vacuum for how long? So let me clean up a little bit and we'll hook up my vacuum pump. All right, so I got my gauges connected to the low and to the high side, as well as my little vacuum pump right here. I'm gonna turn it on, open up the valves, and pull a vacuum. It's creating a vacuum. That's good. High side's already at negative 30 inches of mercury, and the low side is slowly going down. So we'll let that sit there and run for a little bit. I'll bring you back when I have a vacuum. Okay, so the compressor has been running for about 20 minutes now. Both gauges are showing negative 30. I'm gonna clamp these off. So this is now no longer connected to the vacuum pump, which we can now turn off. And we will just let this sit here and see how long, hopefully forever, that these gauges stay where they're at. I'm gonna take a quick picture just to compare later. Just to keep the project moving, I'm going to install the belts, the reservoir for the power steering pump, and start doing the fan shroud, and closing that up. We're going to start with doing one belt at a time. So I'm going to take this belt off and just set it off to the side. We will be putting it back on momentarily, but I want to get the inside belt to the correct tension, tighten down that pump. We might as well install this reservoir back again, and then we'll work on this belt and this belt. Once that's all done, we will worry about the fan and the fan shroud. Okay, we'll start with the reservoir. That is a nasty rag. Let's push this back on. Put the clamp somewhere that is accessible. Okay, with that on as tight as we can get it, the next thing to do will be to tighten these bolts here. Seeing how this pulley is not being used right now, let's take it out, and that should give us a little bit more room to fuss with that bolt. So now that we got that off, do we have better access to this? And we do. Slightly better access, but better access. All right, let's pull this tight. Okay, that belt is tight. Let's tighten up the two adjusters. Mind you, on this style, there's one on the bottom in the front and one on the bottom in the back. For the next one, we'll need to put this pulley back on. And we will fish this on, and we will fish on the alternator belt, and then continue to put on the fan and everything. Okay, that one's kind of in place. Not really. Now it is. Okay, so that one's kind of in place. I don't want to put it on too terribly tight because this is still loose, but let's put this belt in place. Once we had the fan shroud and fan in and bolted down, we can then tighten those. All right. Let's get the fan shroud and fan. Now these things are always a little bit of a fight. So let's get prepared for that. All right. That should be a big enough hole to slide this into. Hopefully we don't damage the radiator too much trying to fight this in. Come on. Here, let's take this. Okay. If I remember correctly, I had a couple zip ties holding all this in place. So let me go get a couple zip ties. And there was one bolt which I took out and did not keep. Let me go find that. All right, one last one to tighten down. Okay. So the fan's tightened down. Now, just I want to double check all my other connections. My screwdriver. Now for these, there is a notch that you can stick your screwdriver into and push, and if you're lucky, you don't punch anything. Quick snug. Now we have the pivot bolt to tighten up. Okay. So that is all of the belts attached. I am not super happy with this one, but we will have to see. Well, an update on the vacuum. It's been a half hour and we've lost our vacuum. So that means somewhere there is a pinhole sized leak. We'll need to figure it out. Seeing how the whole system is new, let's go connection by connection, replace the O-rings, check it out, and reconnect it. All right, this one doesn't look too bad. I'm gonna rotate the connector a little bit, kind of help us out. Which ones do we want to do next? Might as well try 2 on the compressor. Well, I think I see the problem. The seal on the compressor is broken. So that's going to shut us down right now. Well, we suffered a catastrophic failure of the AC compressor. It is disappointing, but we learned a lot. We learned what parts we need and how to put them together, and figured out a lot of the engineering. I need to work on getting a replacement pump, and what that looks like is to be determined. But there is still a lot of work to be done on this truck, and there is a deadline to get it done by. So until then, take care.